Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Coach's Corner. I'm Jeffrey David Hartford, your host and the coach. That's the conduit of optimism, altruism, consciousness, and health. And today I have with me a guest by the name of NEAL HALLINAN. NEAL is somebody that I found on, NEAL, I'm not entirely sure, it might have been Instagram, might have been your YouTube channel, but a PRI instructor that has just literally shaken my world because I've been in the fitness industry for over 20 years. And the information that NEAL shares through PRI, the Postural Restoration Institute, is stuff that should be taught to us as early as elementary school, if you ask me. So, NEAL, thanks so much for being here, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm not an instructor. I just talk about it a lot.
Fair. Okay. I can appreciate that. I take the correction.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, and I'll tell you, so based on that, seeing some of your backstory, we have a lot of parallels. If I understand correctly, some massage background, some personal training background. What got you into all that, and how did you find PRI? What's kind of some of your backstory that got you to where you are today?
Backstory would be that I started to experience a breakdown in my body at a pretty young age, really my teenage years. The first symptom I really remember was the inability to get a good breath. I know I was likely in the 7th or 8th grade, and I remember I used to go to these Seton Hall basketball games at the local college in New Jersey. And back in the early 90s, they were really good. So I used to go with my dad. And I'd be sitting in these small seats in the Meadowlands, the old Meadowlands arena. And I'd just be struggling to get air in. And I'd take bigger breaths. And then I'd finally get that one good breath. I relaxed. Now, I didn't know I was hyperinflating myself, right? I was going in the wrong direction. But that's what I was 12, 13. All I knew is when I would get that one good breath, my body would relax again. But I knew that was I didn't talk about it because I don't know. We didn't talk about it. But then, my ears started to ring when I was a freshman in high school. And then I started to have every sports season because I was a good athlete. I had to give up pitching in the 9th grade because my shoulder was it got called tendonitis, but I don't think it was tendonitis. It was a complete inability to use my shoulder because of patterning. My body was becoming disintegrated, right? Like I had no left side to go to, a right arm cannot function normally unless it can get you to your left side. But when you don't have a pelvis and a body that can shift left appropriately, that right arm loses meaning. So I had to give up pitching. Every sports season, I would have like hamstring pulls, adductor. Every season would end early, and it was just very, very depressing. And then things got worse in college. My sophomore year, I had my first SI joint blowout. And from then on, it just got worse and worse and worse. After I graduated college, I unfortunately did an IT job. I just needed a job. That made things even worse for me because I was sitting and typing all day and staring at a computer screen, which is what most people do now. And I know is quite problematic. So that made things worse. And then the plantar, that's a lot of different, the SI joint issues, neck spasms, plantar fasciitis for about 4 years in both feet, which was debilitating. And then I found by luck in 2005 or 2006, I found a book in Barnes & Noble called Core Performance. And it was by Mark Verstegen. And back then it was kind of revolutionary. And he had something in there that people now call dynamic warm-ups. And he was calling them movement prep or something like that. And he was in the book, I just happened to open to the page where he was talking about tight hips and what tight hips the effects it can have on the rest of the body. And I said, well, I have tight hips because I did. And I was also in a major pelvic tilt issue at that point. I was always having back problems. So I bought the book. I started doing some of the movement prep. And honestly, I couldn't even do that without shaking and sweating. I was so locked up. It was horrendous. But it's not even stuff I would do with people now. But it was enough of some sort of inhibitory activity, of overactivity, that the plantar fasciitis in my feet started to clear up. So once I saw that canal, I was like, this cannot be. The plantar fasciitis was debilitating.
Yeah.
Debilitating in both feet. And it was depressing. It was dark. It put me in some pretty dark place. Because you can't, you're thinking about how am I going to spend the rest of my life? I'm only 25, 26. How am I going to do this I don't want to live a long life like this because this is
right.
The idea of a long life in that state of misery was just like incomprehensible. I couldn't move. So at any rate, plantar fasciitis started to get better, and I saw this connection between the hips, and I started just investigating. Because when I go into something, I go all in, and so that's why I started to feel better. I started dancing, which I couldn't do before that because I couldn't stand up for longer than 5 minutes without just intense pain. So then I started dancing salsa, and I got into an environment where I was like, people seem to be happy. Why is that? Because I was coming out of my IT environment where
Yeah.
everyone was miserable. And I'm like, oh, I'm in a dance studio. People are happy. There's music on. I'm learning something new. I'm good at it. And then that kind of just changed my perspective on just kind of life. And then my dad died unexpectedly. And 6 months later, I was like, this is why am I wasting my life doing this? So I just started to follow the personal training path and teaching dancing because they wanted me to teach. And I, overcame those fears of what will people say.
Yeah.
I'm from this part of New Jersey where everyone's professional.
Yeah.
Uh, so, and what I found was the more I followed my interests, the happier I got. And the more I rejected the conditioning of if you're from here, you should do this.
Yeah.
People are like, you should go to physical therapy school. No, I don't think I want to do that. They're like, you're smart. Well, you can do other things being smart in this realm. You don't have to go to physical therapy school. And I'm
That's
glad I
right.
didn't. So yeah, that was really the journey. And then the pain, when I found PRI, I was still having physical issues, but then I found PRI, and it was like, whoa, why did no one tell me we had two diaphragms? And why did we not,
Right.
why they never say that asymmetry is the rule? That would have changed my perspective on training and everything else that I was already doing.
Amen. That's amazing. Yeah, there's a lot of parallels. And I find that with most of us that get into a field that, I mean, you found alignment with your
Mhm.
purpose,
Yeah.
and you were resisting it. So I would say as much as the PRI stuff is really eye-opening and it's amazing, it gives us so many answers. I'm a believer too that there's an emotional side to this, there's a spiritual side to this. Your body was physically manifesting a misalignment because you were living out of alignment, and it showed up, and it pushed you down a path that you found what you needed to find to really be the best version of you and share your gift with the world. And I'm grateful you're doing it, man. And it's interesting you share that you had been in IT, because the geek in me had this thought process that you are so intelligent. You have something about you that makes me think of like a computer programmer per se. And I started to think like, you're a human reprogrammer at this point with the information you have access to and learning about the human mind body connection and how geared towards the right side we are, and we're hardwired for that, based on the information PRI teaches. I saw a clip the other day of one of the instructors that was talking about how it's been proven that we are in the left side of our brain, which is controlling the right side of the body, and it's just hardwired. There is no alternative that can't exist, and there's only 3 other animals that actually have that in common with us. So it's just so intriguing to me. So I guess with that as some of the foundation, let's dive deep. When you found PRI, what did you do? I understand there's seems like countless different courses that PRI offers, and you've been through nearly all of them, if not all of them.
All of them.
Right? That's amazing. Awesome. So yeah, just as deep as you want to go, hit us up, let us hear it. And, just obviously on I guess I'll say a relatively rudimentary level for the audience to understand what we're talking about, but then as deep as you want to get.
So I think from a very broad perspective, when you get most people learn about PRI because they're teaching mostly physical therapists. So they first approach it from a more mechanical muscles and bones perspective, because it is
Yeah.
that also.
Sure.
It's just not the true picture until that you finally have that aha moment. But you have to get through those primary courses first. And then you'll learn like, oh yeah, all that stuff, that's really not the issue. But you can work. So what are the primary courses? Well, you're learning about the pelvis. You're learning about the rib cage, because they encase those two diaphragms that are not the same on both sides. So you need both sides of your body. We're just biased over to the right. Now you can work on it. You can work. So basically, the proposition is that once people end up on the right side and they get stuck there, not knowingly, obviously, it just simply means, well, how do you get stuck there? It simply means that when you put your weight on your left leg, your pelvis never fully turns to the left, and your torso never fully rotates back to the right. It never gets the chance to. So in that situation, you're never truly on your left leg in a biomechanical sense. You're still oriented to the right, not only when you're on your right side, But also when you put your weight on your left side, on your left leg, you're still oriented to the right. So your brain never registers a true left stance. And that's the problem. You're still using your left side, but what are you doing as you're on your left side? You're overusing your left hip flexors, your left lower back, to your left quads to stabilize that left side. You're not using your left hamstring. You're not using your left adductor, and you're not using your left anterior glute medius nor your left internal obliques. Those are the big four muscles that you have to get more involved. Those are your stance muscles on the left side.
Yeah.
So you can think of it in a biomechanical way at that stage, because that's really, really important. And for a lot of people, that might be all they need, is you can work with them in that more muscular sense.
Yep.
Because they do need to do that.
That's their level of understanding.
Yeah. And so that's what they're teaching people in their primary courses about, first of all, asymmetry and what you need to do to get that body alternating, called walking and breathing, in a true non-compensatory way. And that's still the foundation of PRI, is that you need both sides of the body. But what you eventually start to learn, and I think one of my huge aha moments was in 2016 when I took their visual integration course. When you see these tests changing, like shoulder internal rotations and shoulder pelvis test, neck test, whatever it's going to be, you're still in the mindset that it was the technique that changed it or the muscle that changed it. But then you see the founder, who's unfortunately not doing much teaching anymore, and I think people really missed out if they never got to hear him teach. He got those same tests to change simply by changing someone's prescription. Wait a minute, the pelvis got neutral. Now you went from 30 degrees of internal rotation of the right shoulder to 30 to 90 by changing a prescription. You didn't do a sleeper stretch for the right shoulder, or any PRI techniques. So that's when I had my whole, wow, what is this? What am I actually experiencing here? And so you have to put in the perspective of, okay, what is the event that needs to occur to use a left hamstring to move your pelvis to the left? All right, because that's what if you see some of these PRI techniques, you're lying on your back, your feet are on the wall, you shift your right knee higher, your left knee lower, which is orienting your pelvis. This is my left. I'm not sure if it's the viewer's left, but you turn your pelvis to the left and you breathe. You're now going over onto your non-dominant side, reorienting yourself to the left, turning your pelvis to the left, and you're learning how to put yourself into left stance, but not standing up because gravity would exert too much threat, and you just end up using all the same old muscles again. So you put them in a low gravitational straight, a very low threatening position, which is lying down. You have nowhere to go. You're not going to fall. So you learn to use a left hamstring, a left adductor to reorient you to the left, which is the first stage of getting truly onto your left leg. And you're sensing, you eventually learn, you have to use the sense of your left heel, pulling down into the back of the shoe for that process to work as effectively. Because you start to hear about what they call sensory references. And the references are just areas of the body that the brain, that you can use, bring an awareness to, that will give you the muscles. Because if you do a PRI technique, you say, this is going to be a left hamstring technique. And if someone doesn't feel it, you might say, and this is what everyone does in the beginning, like, all right, really try to use your left hamstring. Like, pull harder, okay? And it might work, but it usually doesn't, because you're starting to build up tension as they do it. We don't want it. The more effort you put in, the more tension goes up. We don't want that. That's weight training, which is fine. That's not PRI. We're trying to put you into a parasympathetic state to experience your muscles. You're only accustomed to feeling your muscles in a sympathetic state. We don't want that. You can do that while you're weightlifting, but you can't do that 24/7. You'll never get into a parasympathetic state. So you'll never use your diaphragms to breathe, because a sympathetic state puts you into extension. A parasympathetic state puts you back into a state of neutrality, and then you can go into a state of flexion and then breathe, and that'll bring down that tension levels. But at any rate, you learn that what makes the muscle be felt is the sensory inputs that the brain associates with actually using that muscle in a stage of the gait cycle. So you can try to say, hey, let's do a left hamstring technique to pull your pelvis back on the left and reorient you to the left. It may work, but it'll work a lot better if you tell that person, all right, as you're in this position and you shift your right knee forward and your left knee back, can you feel your left back push more into the floor? Oh, I can. Great. Your brain just picked up on the fact.
Yeah.
It just says, hey, there's a ground underneath my left side, my left back. That's not underneath my right back, because when I laid down, it was underneath my right back, saying,
Yeah.
I'm on my right side. So you go this way. Do you feel that? Now I feel more pressure. Do you feel less pressure underneath the right side? Yeah, less. Okay. I'm trying to get them to register the sensory inputs that their brain can then pick up on to say, oh, I'm on my left side. Because your brain is just 86 billion neurons
Mm-hmm.
networked together in trillions of ways. How do they know? It's the great mystery. Even the
Right.
neuroscientists say, we don't know how they know. How do they know to fire? Well, a neuron next to them fired because a neuron downstream fired. There's no master controller, though. That's the amazing thing about this. There's no
Wow.
master controller saying, oh, now I'm on my left. Oh, now I'm on my right. It doesn't exist. Nonetheless, there's very predictable in terms
Yeah.
of how there's patterns that will occur depending on how sensory input is being utilized. So I'm trying to get them so they feel their back on their left, they feel their lower back on the left pressing into the floor more than it was before. That changes that updates that consciousness. It reprograms it. I didn't feel that before. Now I feel it. People are not feeling their left side. If someone has a lesion in their right hemisphere of their brain, they will deny that their left arm is their left arm.
Wow.
Called hemi-neglect. There's a great book called The Master and His Emissary. It talks about all this stuff. It's a real phenomenon. That doesn't happen when there's a lesion on the left side. We don't want to lose right hemisphere activity. The people with the lesion on the left, they will not deny their right arm is theirs. Because it's not symmetric. That's the important thing to remember. We have less awareness of the left side of our world. That's just how it's built. Visually, for hearing, intrinsically because of the bigger right diaphragm. So we have to bring awareness to that left non-dominant side. So you give them sensory inputs like a left heel. The moment their brain truly senses, that's why barefoot shoes don't work in this type of situation. That heel needs to be squeezed by something, not just underneath, around the edges where the sensory nerves are. And now, oh, there's the left hamstring. I couldn't feel the left hamstring before. Yeah, because you were trying to work your left hamstring instead of sensing things. The sensory inputs that your brain, those 86 billion neurons, or at least some of them in the motor cortex and the sensory cortex, could light up because they're finally responding to the sensory input that was deprived for so long. And now you have a left hamstring. You didn't have to work for it. But that's what, when he changes someone's prescription, and that brain then senses more left side of the world, it goes left. And now you can get a left hamstring. But if that brain is not perceiving space over on the left or the ground underneath the left foot, you're not getting a left hamstring. I'm sorry. Space and ground, you have to integrate it.
That's wild. Now, yeah, for sure. And it's interesting. I mean, you can hear that and feel almost discouraged or set up for failure, but there's obviously optimism in recognizing that you can work towards that. So the earlier we teach this, the more we understand this, we get it out there, we correct it before it becomes a problem and it's not an issue. So to me, that's very empowering. I guess I would think the average person you work with, obviously, everybody's completely different. Some people have had this reinforced for years. Some people have had serious issues because of it. But is there a window of time to give the listener some sense of optimism of how long does it take for me to correct this? Is there an equation? Okay, if you're 40 or older and you've dealt with this for a long time, it might take you a little bit longer, of course. But if you're in your 20s, maybe a little bit quicker, but some sort of a ballpark idea for people to have an understanding.
Well, I would say it's just like anything. The longer you're in a pattern, whether it's of thought or a position, the more time it may untake and the more your brain may be resistant to letting go of that pattern. So, if this was taught, if the fundamental paradigm to all healing modalities was, by the way, you're not symmetrical, so let's not treat the right side and the left side the same because they're not the same. Yeah, a lot of people would not be in the situation that they're in because they're over on their right. And yes, some people say, no, but I feel like I have more weight on my left. I understand that happens. I was one of those people. But you're using your left side to keep you oriented to the right. That's the irony of it. So there is no opposite pattern, despite what someone might hear if you start to watch PRI stuff. There is no other pattern. You might have other layers, especially when it comes to the cranium. You might have other layers of compensation that push you over, that make you fall to the left and keep you oriented to the right, but you're not truly on your left leg. If you were truly on your left side, this person would not be coming to see me. I can assure you of that. So
interesting.
Yeah, so people are over on their right. Not a problem as long as they keep moving. It's not a problem to have a dominant side. You just have to move through life. The problem is modern life. The more you sit and stare and stop moving, your asymmetry goes away. Now that's a weird way of putting it, but to be asymmetric, it implies you have two sides. So if you lose one side and you get stuck on the other, and yeah, of course you put your weight on the left leg, but you never get there truly from a brain biology perspective. You've lost your asymmetry because you don't have two sides anymore. You're just you're just existing over on one side. But it's not that hard. The younger you are, the easier it is. All right. The people, it doesn't take that long. It seems more dramatic than it is. Honestly, it seems more dramatic, but it's really not. The people that struggle the most are people like me whose their issues are coming from the cranium, their visual system, their jaw and their teeth, because it all inputs the neck in terms of the moment your visual system is not functioning properly, your head and neck are going to come forward. The moment a jaw, you lose, a lot of people lose teeth and the dentist never says, that should be replaced. Otherwise, blah, blah, blah can happen. So they just have to leave open spaces. And now the teeth are not hitting you kind of lost the frequency. Something that was there previously is now gone. And teeth are highly neurologic. They're sending signals back to your brain very quickly. They're skipping the brainstem. They're skipping the spine, right? They just go back to the brainstem. They're going into the homeostatic areas of the brain, into the insula, the posterior insula, which is homeostasis. Losing a teeth is a homeostatic disruption. So if it's a homeostatic disruption, that's autonomic nervous system. What are you going to do? Is your brain going to say, oh, I'm nice and relaxed? No, it's going to say there's a threat. And when you get threatened, you go into extension and hence the neck fall forward. So the neck is where it's at. That's what I'm treating. Whether they come in with knee pain, I'm like, all right, okay, fine. But I want to know, is the neck relaxed? If the neck is relaxed, I'll have no problem treating their knee pain, which is really just treating asymmetry. But when the neck does not side bend, or it has no curve to it, it's completely straight and it's locked up, that's an autonomic nervous system issue.
Yeah.
And I got to figure out what's the primary influence that's locking that neck up, because necks pull us up. They extend us. I'm hoping they just sit too much at a computer and their head and necks, and they're breathing in this position. They keep using their neck to breathe. That will continuously pull you into extension. And now your pelvis falls forward, but you don't fall forward equally because of asymmetry. You fall forward and to the right. Okay, that's the important thing to remember. So if their neck is overactive just because they neck breathe too much, not difficult. Where it gets difficult is when mandibles have shifted, cranial bones have shifted because of years and years of asymmetric muscle activity that then starts to misposition you. And now you're stuck in it. It's become now a structural issue.
Right.
That was me. So missing teeth, cross bites, jaws that are deviated, big differences between the two eyes. Like, one eye has a -1, the other one has a -2.5. Even in optometry, that's known that can be an issue. Like the brain might have a difficulty integrating two visual pictures into one. So there's a lot of things that dentists and optometrists treat locally, not realizing the effects that it has on the rest of the body, and that the body might have, but the asymmetry of the body and the position someone got stuck in for extended periods of time might actually be why they're seeing these things. And if you just try to treat it locally without realizing, this brain no longer recognizes the left side of the world, the left side of the body. You might treat up here in a way that it really didn't need to be treated. Or, if you see a jaw shifted and a tooth pushed out, I'm like, oh. So the dentist or the orthodontist is like, we got to straighten these teeth. But they don't realize the jaw's only over here because the body's over here. And if you get the body over here, that jaw might come back to a better position. And then you come back to center and that now might be straight. You might not need the dentist at all. And that's where
Wow.
the integration comes in. It's tough, but most PRI therapists, when they get to a higher level, they're usually going to have at least a dentist to collaborate with, because it's pretty
Okay.
frequent that someone's going to need a mouth guard to disrupt the patterning that has occurred up in the mouth, because that's the vagus system. That's where life happens. Anytime the oral cavity or the visual system or hearing, but hearing less than the others, are not regulated properly, that's fight or flight nonstop.
Yeah.
And now we can't get access to that lower body to work on your knee pain.
Wow. It's even deeper than I thought. I think there's a point at which we can kind of simplify it and say it's like we already knew with the human body that, yep, we have our skeleton, which without the skeletal muscle is a pile of bones. So the skeletal muscle's there. We have the fascia holding it all together. We have the nervous system there. So the issue we run into is, because we're already kind of predisposed to this, we are shifted to our right because the brain is set up. We're functioning from the left side. That's controlling the right side of the body. But the optimism is in that through repetition, through intellectually understanding this and then implementing it with some experience and with some repetition, we can just train the body to get over there. So that I find to be
Absolutely.
quite optimistic, right? So I keep going back to that. Your case was pretty extreme, which is, in the grand scheme of things, it's a blessing, because it lit a fire under you to find the answers. And now that you have them, you're like, yeah, I'm going to find very few people that have a case as extreme as mine. So this will be easy to fix.
Well, that's true. It was pretty complicated. But the good thing is, when someone comes to, even if I can't help them, and there's plenty of people that come to see me, and I say, look, don't waste your money, because you're going to need integration with, you need some other stuff before PRI has the opportunity to work. It's not that it won't work for you. It's not going to have the opportunity because you can't inhibit the overactivity of the fight or flight system, because there's a threat from your visual system or your jaw or your teeth, or maybe you're in flat feet, but that's simpler. Like, you just need orthotics. It's really only when the cranium's involved that it becomes more complicated. Oh, and also, well, no, I would also say when people are hypermobile, that's also the tough. So I would say there's 3 different groups of people. Most people will fit into this. They just got on the right side too much. Yeah, then they develop some instability in their left hip, which is very, very normal. They sit, everything they're doing is over on the right side. They don't realize that all their weightlifting, they're still over on their right side. They think they're doing bilateral exercises, but in reality, they're just not, because it's impossible. I mean, you'll use both sides, but not equally, because you're not symmetric. So again, that's not hard. That's typical. The primary PRI courses can resolve that issue. All right. But that's like 80% of people that come to see you, I would say. Although I feel like that number is decreasing, and the more neurological types are increasing because of modern life and technology. We'll see about that. But let's say that's the majority of people that come in to see you. If they just stick with the program, they come for a couple sessions, they will be feeling way better, because there's nothing really holding them back. What holds you back is when something occurs in the cranium, or something like hypermobility, which is a diagnosable connective tissue disorder. That brain does not feel, their interoceptive sense is not there, because the pressure sense in their joints is not there. Now, it's not all or nothing, because it could exist in certain areas, in certain joints or areas of the body, and not in others. But the hypermobile types can be way more challenging to work with. And people who've just had major dysautonomy, just a lot of autonomic nervous system dysregulation, whatever the origin, whether it's physical or psychological or mental, and I don't really make the difference. Like, what goes on in the mind will play itself out in the body. So 80% of people, those primary courses, you can help a lot of people with those primary courses.
Yeah.
The harder types are the hypermobiles, and then the cranial driven, like me. That becomes very complicated to work with. But the good thing is, most people are not that. But there's definitely enough of them.
Sure.
So yeah. So in terms of optimism,
Yeah.
more likely, everyone thinks they're the worst case scenario, but in reality, that's not always true. And you could be helped quite a bit just through normal, typical PRI type of activity. To do it on your own is very difficult, obviously. You want to see somebody who can actually evaluate, through testing and all that. It's not, if people go see a personal trainer for years and years and years, which is money, 4 to 7 sessions with a good PRI therapist It's not extravagant. I wouldn't. Now, depending on where you are in the country, obviously, but and everyone decides what they think is a good use of money. But if 4 to 7 sessions could get you back to not only feeling great, but actually having the left side of your body truly involved in your life,
Yeah.
you can, because it's not typical physical therapy. It's, if anything, it's actually closer to just very unique or very targeted personal training, because they're still,
Hmm.
we don't call them exercise, we call them techniques. So they're neurosensory techniques to relearn, to re-educate your brain how to use that body that it kind of lost track of.
Love it.
But we're not treating pain. You are treating pain, but you're treating the pattern of asymmetrical tension
Hmm.
that's causing the pain. So it's
Right.
not like physical, it's more like personal training in a sense. So, I had to go to massage school just so I could put my hands on people. I don't
Right.
really give many massages. I massage upper right chest areas to get them expanding with air. But beyond that, because this little subclavius muscle that can really gunk things up. But beyond that, I don't. It's really focused personal training, not with
Hmm.
weights. If you put weights on
Right.
somebody, they're gonna extend. They're not stable enough to do it. So it's more like personal training. Just invest 4 to 7 sessions. And that's why I say for people working with me, other people have their own ways of, because there's no peer, just to make it clear, there is no PRI, there are no PRI physical therapists or strength and conditioning coaches. There's 6 of them. They're in Lincoln, Nebraska at the clinic.
Yeah.
These
Wow.
are independent physical therapists or independent strength and conditioning coaches that take PRI courses. And then a
Right.
lot of them then say, this seems like the best way to treat people. So,
Yeah.
because sometimes people say, oh, you have to, this PRI therapist charges too much, or this PRI therapist doesn't understand. Yeah, because they're individual. There is
Sure.
no, there is a certification process, but like in anything, it's like the minimum amount of information you need to help people. Right? It's
Right.
not all
Right.
encompassing. It's impossible.
Yeah, and then once you have that credential, you can call yourself a practitioner of that process, but you're running your own business. I understand.
Absolutely, and they're independent, so they set their own prices, they set their own policies, how long they meet with people. It's all it's they're independent. That does not reflect PRI at all. They either just they take the education, and some of them might not even use it. Unfortunately, I've come to realize that they'll still do other stuff that I wouldn't do. So you always wonder, okay, what's their understanding of? There's different levels of understanding. Yeah, they know about the asymmetry. Otherwise, they wouldn't have you doing this type of technique. They wouldn't be doing some of these tests. But do they understand what I understand about the cranium? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, most likely not, because they likely didn't live through what you did and have the same approach to it. And it's really interesting. What that makes me think of too is the first time I took my National Academy of Sports Medicine Certified Personal Trainer exam, I failed. And it was the blessing for me. It was interesting because I had already gone to school for all this. I took anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, you name it. And what I realized, you only need a 70 to pass their exam. And every
Mhm.
practice exam I took was an 85 or better. And I didn't crack their book. I was taking it with the wrong intentions. I wanted to just say I had the credential. So I
Yeah,
went in very confident, probably cocky, but very confident, and felt like I already know this information. And the science I knew. What I didn't know was their specific acronyms and what made them unique to everybody else. And as a result, I failed. And it turned out to be a blessing for me because I realized in a brutal, honest moment with myself, I wasn't taking that certification to actually use what I learned. I was taking it to say I had it and
Mm.
continue on doing what I was going to do
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's what just made me think of when you're talking about there are some people that have been through this that aren't using it, and they probably took it for the wrong reasons. They didn't get enough of a connection of what it actually means, what you can actually do. And
yeah,
that's so powerful. And
yeah,
you said too of being able to try to do this on your own. Is it possible? Sure, but you're not going to have a great level of success, because even if you are a trainer yourself, a PRI trainer yourself, who's doing your assessment? Who's doing your evaluation? Like your program design is only going to be as good as your assessment is. So
Yeah.
that's a piece of it as well.
Yeah.
And then I guess my question for you is, when I hear things like we need corrective lenses, we might need a mouth guard, we might need orthotics or different shoes, I understand that for that sensory input. But is there a window of time, specifically with the mouth guard and the orthotics and the shoes, that we recognize, yeah, once we've put the input there and the body has corrected it, can we then eliminate those external sources? Or do you feel we can? Okay,
The
awesome.
objective. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
It's the objective is always it's just to reorient and rearrange sensory inputs to
yes.
get them all in concert with each other. Because the more pattern someone gets, the more unstable they get, the more likely they're going to start to overuse a sense to help stabilize them. Because you only have really three because this really comes down to orientation, where a brain understands itself in space. If the brain doesn't know where it is, you take it for granted. But when you if you start to read neuroscience, this is what the neuroscience is about. Like it doesn't filter down to the general public. Everyone's moving, but you don't really give any thought. You think it's about muscles, but you're not giving thought about how is the brain making these decisions on how to move. I can tell you, when someone is not flexible, it's not because their muscles are just tight for no reason. The brain is saying, don't move me because I don't know where I am. I've lost the ground. You have three senses for orientation. The ground underneath your feet, that will send signals to your vestibular system through proprioceptive inputs through the ankles and through the knee, through the whole body, really. But that ground underneath your feet is a sense of pressure that your brain will feel. Those 86 billion neurons that are blind, they're looking for those senses of pressure because it's pre-programmed. Once you lose it because you're only over on your right and the left foot never pressurizes on the ground the same way the right side does, you're now stuck. And your brain says, wait a minute, what happened to that sense of two? Why is there only one sense here? So if you lose a sense somewhere, you have to make up for that sense somewhere else for stabilization reasons. And how does your brain decide to do that? Well, it can happen a lot of different ways, but it will create a sense of tension because now you're in a threat to fall. So muscles will start to tighten up and now you're in sympathetic land because your brain is saying there's a threat. I don't care that you want to stretch. I don't care that you want to lift weights. That's not my desire. That's not my concern. My concern is that you do not fall because that's a threat to life. And thus, what do? Well, you'll start to see jaws shift. You'll start to see cross bites, canines that get kicked out. People are feeling the wrong areas of their mouth. They might start to overuse one eye, a lot of times the right eye. They might overuse their right ear for orientation purposes because auditory information says, there's that sound, and it does all these amazing arithmetic calculations. That's how the hearing system works to determine binaurally between both ears to determine where you are. Where is that sound coming from? Is it closer to my right side or closer to it doesn't know. It doesn't know. It's insane. If you want to have your mind blown, the visual system is pretty easy to understand. Read about the auditory system. It's still not well understood. It's because it's so complicated. But nonetheless, for orientation, for your brain to say, I know where I am, and now I know how to move without threat, it needs the ground underneath your feet. It needs understanding of auditory space, which is completely created. Right? It doesn't exist to the brain. It has to be created through sound, which comes and goes. It's ephemeral.
Right.
And your visual system, which is number one. So anytime someone is not seeing 20/20, it's not because we need them to read an eye chart. It's because we need space expanded so that brain can perceive that space. When you're not seeing clearly, space contracts. It collapses on you. And now heads and necks fall forward. You become tight. You're no longer perceiving the periphery, but the periphery is what our brain uses to center us, to know where we are. And it's less processed on the left automatically. So those are the things that's really what this is all about. If you can get space being perceived, and again, the auditory part is, even in PRI, is still not it's not discussed much because there's not a lot of, well, first of all, like I said, the auditory system is not well understood. And there's not a ton of research on, they know that the brain uses auditory sound for orientation. Where am I? It's the inferior colliculi. It's just in the brainstem. The vision is easy because light hits the retina and it's already mapped. You can't avoid
Right.
the light. Like the moment, unless you have a sleep mask on, even when your eyes are
Hmm.
closed, you're processing light.
That's
So
right.
light is number one because it's always there, unless you're sleeping. But even then, your brain will process it. If there's enough light, it'll be come through your eyelids. So unless you have a sleep mask on, blocking out the light completely, your brain is going to be processing light. But no one's going to walk around without a sleep mask. Under normal conditions, 50 to 60% of your brain has areas devoted to visual processing. So it's number one. So that has to be there. And then auditory has to be there. But again, that's less understood. That's really where my main interest is because I know it was affecting me. And then the ground underneath your feet. And if you have those, your eye is going to work wonderfully well for you. But sometimes people
Hmm.
learn to overuse something like a crossbite.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
jaw shifts. And now the brain says, if I have this here, I know where I am. But then that gets in the way of coming back to center and finally getting to your left.
Of course.
You got to
Yeah. Those
get rid of that.
compensation patterns.
Yeah, that thing that helped it stabilize is now in the way of recovery. And so you get a splint to take that crossbite away. The teeth can't be felt. It's gone. And now I can move left. You're free.
Hmm.
And
Awesome.
then you can do a program. But the same thing, it could be just the amount of people who have too much power in their glasses and don't even
Yeah.
realize it. I lowered their prescription by 0.5 because I have these lenses. Like I just have a optometry kit I got off Amazon because I knew it was happening. They might have a -3 and I can't pass any test. They're so tight. And I know it's not their mouth. Their shoes are fine. Once you've been doing this long enough, you kind of know what you're going to see. And I
Yeah.
say, let me just change that prescription. If they have contacts on, I'll just put a pair of reading glasses over their eyes that effectively lower their prescription. Oh, now they have all this range of motion they didn't have before.
Wow.
And then I say, you're going to need to find an optometrist. And I have one, thankfully. I have two now that I can refer to who know the number one issue that I see is people being overcorrected. And they know that having too much power compresses space, just like having underpower does. So they know that's a huge problem. Giving people too much minus power is a big problem.
So I got to share with you. I mentioned this before we hit record, but a handful of my clients I've already mentioned your name to and given your information. One of them, the more we talk, the more I'm convinced she needs to talk to you, and I'm going to do my best to send her your way because just being able to understand what you're saying, so people can just see that okay, we're programmed by this current paradigm that I refer to as the disempowerment paradigm through this medical model of once I can see, you tell me what your symptoms are, I can run a couple of tests, I can see, okay, these are your problems, we see it over here, and now I can call it this thing, I can name it, blame it, tame it, right? Pills, injections, surgery come into play, but so many of the issues that arise are really rooted in a lot of what you're talking about, that the body's just disconnected. The body's not getting the sensory information that it needs, and it's compensating, and that it can compensate in so many different ways, causing so many different issues that if we just get back to being able to sense the area around us and turn on the parasympathetic, turn off the sympathetic, I mean, it's remarkable what the body's capable of doing. So this is a really big piece of what I call the empowerment paradigm shift.
Absolutely.
What you're doing, the information you're providing. And I understand it's PRI's program, but what you're doing with it because of, again, I view it as a gift what you had to go through, even though I'm sure while you were going through it wasn't fun.
No, I learned a lot, but it was, and it's not like it's a straight line of improvement because
Yeah.
I still remember the first 5 years, I still thought I had a pelvis issue. I didn't know everything was up here. And then to finally find the people that could help me after I had been, because my head was tilted. I mean, you can see it in my pictures from when I was 6 or 7. So my brain was struggling with sensory input, with sensory integration from a very young age. So I had built up a lot of compensations. So that's why most people are not going to be as complicated as me. And I know what I'm looking at generally pretty quickly. And I know when and I think this is the most important thing. I know when I can't help somebody,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to say, hey, just keep coming to see me, charging up more and more money when it's not worth seeing me. Like, you need to see, hey, I have a colleague in Philadelphia who actually has a dentist and an optometrist he can collaborate with.
Awesome.
Or you can go to Nebraska where they have everything there. I'm just like, don't come see me. So I think my most oddly is the value in my experience is not that I can make more money because I know how to help. It's actually, those are the people I can't really help. I don't have the
Yes.
resources, so I can save
Yep.
them time and effort. Like, no, these techniques are not going to work for you. Stop watching this channel. Stop watching
Yeah.
people. Those techniques cannot work for you. There's no context for them, and they're not going to work for you anyway. So
That's amazing.
stop doing more. I've had people come see me like, oh, I've done like 30 sessions with a PRI therapist. Now, sometimes they're not actually, sometimes they are what we say PRI inspired. Big difference.
Mm-hmm. Oh
That's not
yeah.
the same. Like
Oh yeah.
you're still not neutral. I can get somebody neutral and like just because I know what I'm doing. Like this was not what I was doing when I first started out, but I can get somebody in 5 minutes because I
That's
know it's a
amazing.
sensory issue. So I can manipulate your senses. It's not hard. You just have, well, it takes a long time to get there, but once you know it,
Yeah, to stay there, right?
yeah, it takes a long time for me for having me to understand this the way that I do. That was not an overnight
Yes.
process. But there's no
Yes, yes.
reason someone should have to be taking, if you can't get somebody neutral in 2 sessions or 3 sessions, and again, that's just the starting point. That just means they're no longer stuck on the right side. But if you can't get somebody back to center in the first 2 or 3 sessions, you're probably not going to get them neutral. There's something else going on. Or, depending on your level of experience, that's the other thing. But it shouldn't take somebody 20, 30 sessions and still not be neutral. You can't be
Yeah.
helped at that point through PRI techniques.
Right.
It's something else that's preventing those techniques from working.
Yeah, I'd say at that point, there's a distinction between, yes, if this person has no clue about it and you're a PRI trainer who is helping them in some capacity, they're better off than being left to their own devices. But if you're not doing the basics in a short window of time, then it feels like a business model that isn't geared towards actually helping people. It's more geared towards lining your
Yeah,
pockets. And
and
that's a concern for
you'll
sure.
find that in any profession,
Yeah,
in any therapy,
100%.
whatever. Yeah, because everyone's
Yeah.
different. Because
Yeah,
for
disheartening.
me, it's very personal.
Yes, I'm with you.
I'm very invested emotionally in these things because I've suffered and I've been through it. For people who've never been through it, they might be like, what's the big deal? I'm not, it's better than they're not doing anything at all.
Right. Right.
Personally, I'm not sold on that idea because if your intention is to get them to use both sides of their body, but because they can't truly get neutral, they're not really ever using their left side 100%. What are you actually doing?
Yeah.
You're
How
teaching
much
them
are
to
you
use the
benefiting
right
them?
side of their body while they're trying to get on their left side. And now
Yeah.
how does the brain start compensating for that? So you might start now, if you've never experienced, you don't even know PRI exists, that's completely different. You're working off your knowledge base. But it's, so that's the crisis of consciousness a lot of people have when they
That's
find
where
it.
I've been.
Yeah.
Since I found it, I've felt like, wait a minute, I've been in the industry for over 20 years and I've tried so hard to help people because my heart's in the right place too. I did this with some nutrition things that I had learned years ago too when I first started out, and I realized, hey, what we were teaching, what we were taught, that's not good. That's not working. We need to change this. And I would feel guilty. And the only thing I can do, guilt's a funny thing, but the only thing I can do is recognize, okay, what I was taught isn't right. It's not working. So I'm not going to keep teaching it. I'm going to learn something else and I'm going to teach that. And, as a result, it serves people. I know we're getting really close to the time, but I do want to throw out there real quick. You mentioned you have a colleague in Philadelphia that has some, an optometrist and a dentist they work with. Do you have an optometrist by any chance you work with?
I do have it. Yes, I have.
Okay.
Actually, the optometrist I refer people to is actually in Westchester County.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Because I connected with one that's on Long Island, and I just somebody that whether it's another one that could help or however that plays out, if that makes sense, we can discuss it at a later date.
Can I just add one thing?
Please.
Because when I say this right left issue, and then people who are coming to see me are in pain. If I know, if you're just working with general population, they're not in pain, then you're not doing anything wrong. They're hiring you to get them more fit. That's all fine.
Sure.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when
Yep.
people come to see me or any PRI therapist, because usually when they're going to see a PRI therapist, they're in pain. And if
Yeah.
I know that the pain is because of a body that can't effectively get off of the right side and onto the left side, if I have them doing exercises that are ostensibly to get their left side working, but they're not really on their left side because they could never even get neutral to begin with. That's the crisis of confidence that I had.
I got you.
because of my level of awareness and understanding at that point in time. If someone isn't even aware of this, they're not doing anything wrong.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
It's the understanding that I had, that's what made the crisis.
Yeah,
I was never aware of it to begin with, or I thought, I only took the primary courses and I wasn't, it still seemed to me that the information was more biomechanical in nature. And, I could be like, yeah, but we'll just keep working on that left side. Because they don't even, your consciousness and understanding of the material didn't expand enough. That's just ignorance, not in a bad way. It's
yep,
just
yep,
the knowledge isn't fully formed yet. So you're not doing anything wrong. It's again, it's the intent. It's what you know to be
yes,
true, however you perceive it to be true, and how you react to that information. So for me, I couldn't keep personal training because I realized that I could not treat the pattern that was causing someone pain, or just knowing that when they're doing these exercises, they're too far on the right, I might not be helping them. That was
sure.
the way, that was my crisis. I'm not saying that's
Yeah,
going to be everyone's. That was what went on in my mind. So I made the choice to not personal train anymore and just devote my life to PRI. But now, of course, that has expanded into so many different ways, so many different realms, because so much of, yeah, it's just expanded. But that was my crisis of
yeah,
consciousness. I'm not saying I'm not saying anyone's bad. I'm
yep,
saying when you get a certain level of understanding, you see a big picture, and then you see the people that are coming to you and what you're doing in professionally. Am I helping somebody? I couldn't say that I was.
mm,
That's if I was personal training them, knowing the position that they were in. That's just how not everyone's going to see it that way, and that's fine. This is just you'll feel it. Like you said, spiritually, like there's something, you have to be in line. If my mind was like, I don't know if I'm helping them, but I'm going to keep doing it anyway, I couldn't live like that.
I'm with
You're
you.
being pulled apart in two different directions. Your energy is not flowing. So
Yeah,
I had to get my alignment, my business in line with what I knew to be my personal truth. I'm not saying this is the truth for everybody. This is my
sure.
person. They had to get in alignment before I felt comfortable doing what I was doing. And now I can expand into personal training a little bit more. I might start doing a little bit more of it on people who are already stable, who have both sides. Then there's nothing wrong. And it's not really that hard. Again, it's not for the average population. It's not really that hard. But I might start to do some personal training at that point on people who can achieve what I need them to achieve, so that I know I'm not actually doing them any harm.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting. I think that shows through in your work because I don't think I could have articulated it that way. And had you not told me about that, I don't know that I would have known it for sure. But the way you convey the information, the work you put out, it resonated pretty deep with me. And I really wanted to connect. And this is pretty awesome. One last quick little story I'll share based on all this. I've got a background in bodybuilding as well with my years of being a personal trainer. My right quad was so much more developed than my left to the point that my left knee had an issue. It took me to the orthopedist, who, of course, wanted to shoot it with what I get cortisone shot,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm like, I'm glad I got it only because now I can speak to it with firsthand knowledge. But I wish I didn't have it, and now doing a lot of the corrective work with the 90 and getting into the left and feeling that left femur be able to internally rotate, feel the left pelvis actually be able to shift back as I step over there. Now I'm seeing my quads balance out, and it's really exciting. Thinking back to how awful it was and squatting 400 pounds and the crazy things that, of course, that's going to cause a problem when you're stuck on the right side.
Yeah, like bilateral exercises are not as bilateral as you may think. Neurologically, it's almost impossible. That's why I emphasize single limb training as much as possible,
Yeah, I love it.
because you can split the
Awesome.
body up into two different parts, which it is.
Absolutely. And let the brain take that, get that sensory input into the brain so it can send that motor signal out and really start to reinforce it in a positive way as opposed to a compensatory way. But yeah, as I alluded to, I know you got to get going. So I'll let you get going soon. And I'll just call to attention one thing that we said before we hit record, and hopefully we can follow through with this. That I got to get myself down to see you in person and go through some of this stuff, and we'll record it there because I think feeling it and doing it, I'll be able to convey it in an even better way to the audience and be of service. So,
Yeah,
well,
definitely. Yeah, feeling it is definitely better than hearing about it.
heck yeah, absolutely. Well, Neil, thanks so much, man. This was incredible. I had been looking forward to it for quite a while, and we'll stay in touch. Audience, you know the drill. do the whole subscribe, like, comment, share, and I will put all of Neal's stuff in the show notes. So be sure to follow him if you don't already. And till next time, have a blessed day. Be well.